Well, it's now or never.
Alright, it's the third night of June. I'm feeling good. Had a perfectly fine work day. I have tomorrow off, and so I'm using this opportunity to talk about what all the cool kids are talking about right now. Nintendo. And all the rainbows and mustard gas that come with them. So, Nintendo's 2026 up to this point has been a pretty slow burn, at least in comparison to 2025. It makes sense. At this point, the initial hype of the Switch 2 has already died down, and the intense reactions to the Switch 2's initial price point along with the higher game prices have also mostly died down. It also had two general directs. Yeah, they certainly were directs, weren't they? Don't worry, we'll get back to those. But yeah, this year Nintendo has kind of just been chugging along. Mostly they've just been releasing the games in Switch 2 editions they had already announced in September. To be fair, nothing they've released this year has garnered the same critical and audience negativity as Welcome Tour or Drag X Drive, but it also feels like nothing has really punched at that same high level as, say, Donkey Kong Bonanza. Tomodachi Life has done surprisingly well for such a late Switch 1 game, and its presence on social media has certainly been felt, but yeah, it's a Switch 1 game. This isn't exactly moving the needle on the Switch 2. The Nintendo Switch 2 editions are what they are. Every Nintendo fan has a take on these, and I doubt the majority of them are positive. I just don't see how allowing last-gen games to run and look better on the new hardware should be behind a paywall. It's just one of those shitty modern gaming things that I'm still baffled as to how it caught on. The ones that offer new content are obviously more justified, but the quality of that content has evidently been all over the place. They kinda shot themselves in the foot by having that Jamboree TV bullshit leading the charge on Switch 2 editions, but hey, gotta justify that camera somehow. Mario Tennis Fever was a flop. Entirely justified. Mario sports games don't exactly have a good reputation these days, especially recently with Super Rush and Battle League. So that damaged reputation in tandem with it being $70 and the fact that it's tennis again when there are already multiple tennis games available on both Switch 1 and 2, and hey presto, the game didn't sell well. Hey, I'm just saying, a new Mario Baseball probably would have done better. But hey, it was for the best. This game finally pierced Nintendo's thick skull that you can't, in fact, charge $70 and up for every new release, and now Nintendo is finally having to enact some variable pricing that isn't just paying $70 or $80. Yoshi and the Mysterious Book seems promising. I said in my most anticipated games list a few months ago that I wasn't going to bother with this game if it was $70, but when big retailers started price matching Nintendo's own lower digital price, I decided to give it a chance. I haven't played it yet, but I did see Uncle Al speak very positively about it, and I take his opinions pretty seriously since we have pretty similar gaming taste. He keeps calling it Yoshi's Funny Book Game, and I can't get enough of it. It does seem like it's part Kirby's Epic Yarn and part Pokemon Snap with the puzzle platforming and experimenting around to find new secrets, which does sound pretty neat to me. I don't even want to get into Pokemon, but they kinda have been carrying the first half of the year between Pokopia being a smash hit and helping fill out the schedule of a couple other releases. Of course, modern Pokemon isn't what it is without having a catch or two, sometimes a couple dozen, but I really don't want to be a grump and ruin other people's fun. Pokopia seems great. I just personally don't like how it's opened Pandora's box on game keycards being used for Nintendo's own first-party releases, especially when it's still full price. I hope it's a one-time thing, but I'm prepared to see more after how well Pokopia did in spite of that. Champions is what it is. I just couldn't care less about competitive Pokemon. Not sure how Ilka got signed on for another Pokemon project, but that's neither here nor there. And the Gen 1 remakes released as $20 ROMs? Sure. Obviously these are an insane ask, especially when GBA games available through NSO were already a thing, but at least in a vacuum, completely ignoring emulation, these games are a wonderful departure from the rest of the mainline Pokemon games on the Switch family. I mean, you can get a good Pokemon game on the Switch now for just $20, where it didn't launch as a broken unfinished mess, it looks good and runs well, there's no DLC to worry about, no Pokemon locked behind NSO. Like, I want to be upset at the Pokemon company for being as lazy as possible and charging $20 for GBA ROMs, but they somehow released a higher quality product by doing so. So, when? The point is, Nintendo has largely been inoffensive this year so far, and a lot of that has also been because they've been largely quiet this year. They've done multiple smaller directs already, but we've yet to get that big general direct that people have been speculating about and creating rumors about since what, February? And it's funny because they've almost certainly released enough trailers and updates within that time to fill out an early year general direct. But so far, Nintendo has really taken to just uploading all their overview trailers and release date trailers on YouTube and social media. It wasn't that crazy when it was just for games we were already aware of, but then they proceed to show off a new Star Fox game on May 6th in its own little private direct and only gave people like a 15-minute heads up. It's just a little weird, right? Why not make this a part of a bigger direct? The only thing I can think of is they wanted to unveil a new game right before they had their big fiscal report and investor conference on May 8th. Also, they probably wanted to strike while the iron was still hot from the Mario Galaxy movie since Fox was a big part of that movie, so fair enough. Now, things did take a turn recently when it was announced during that fiscal sales report that Nintendo would be raising the price for the Switch 2 consoles. Japan surprisingly got one that's already set in, and the US and Europe will be getting hit with one on the 1st of September. In the USA, we'll be going from $450 to $500. Lovely. Now, we don't exactly know the nature of this increase. For all we know, they could just be axing the individual console and making the bundle the only option. That wouldn't be so bad since the Switch 2 bundles have been a thing from the beginning, but they'd still be raising the price floor for a Switch 2, which isn't exactly good news. And that's the best case scenario. They could just as likely make the standard Switch 2 package 500 snickerdoodles and bump up the bundle to $550. This is just sadly where we are now. We all have AI to thank for driving up the prices of phones, computers, and even video game consoles. And every gaming company is feeling it, not just Nintendo. In just the last year, each of the 3 big home consoles have seen a price increase. Hell, the PS5 had 2. And as recently as a week or 2 ago, Valve increased the price of the Steam Deck by a ridiculous amount. It's just a vicious cycle that we're in right now, and while we can obviously argue about the nuances between all these examples, I think it's intellectually dishonest to label some of these increases as corporate greed and others as a necessary evil due to the price of parts going up. From where I'm standing, it's gotta be all or nothing. If you think Nintendo has no choice but to increase the price of the Switch 2 while thinking Sony, Microsoft, and Valve are all just being greedy corporations who are unwilling for the line to go anywhere but up, you're full of shit and unironically doing the multi-billion-dollar company meme. And that goes for every example across the board. Valve just so happens to be the most recent instance of this. Lots of Valve fanboys are suddenly having to play mad defense, and while I'm not happy the Steam Deck price went up by so much, I won't lie and say there isn't some catharsis in watching the Valve fanatics squirm after spending the last year taking constant potshots at the home console crowd. You know what they say about stones and glass houses. At this point, this is just what we have to deal with if we want to play the new video games. At least until this AI bubble hopefully bursts. And this is why I'm deeply fascinated in June in all these upcoming game presentations and shows. After all these price increases, it is on the games now more than ever to help sell these consoles and get gamers interested. It actually feels like each company is under some serious pressure to impress and wow the audience, which has become a real rarity in a post-E3 world. And I like the sound of that. Everyone's here. We got the State of Play, the Xbox Game Showcase, the Summer Game Fest. Where's Nintendo? Look, the last General Direct was all the way back in September. We have gone nearly 9 months without one. Someone on planet Earth conceived a child while Fire Emblem Fortune's Weave was closing off the September Direct, and they could very likely give birth by the time this ideal June Direct comes out. Wild thought, I realize, but that's how long it's been, and I want to believe this is gonna happen. I don't think it's a coincidence that Nintendo is waiting all the way till September to raise the price of the Switch 2 in America and Europe. They're not stupid. They know the moment they raise the price, sales for the Switch 2 are going to slow down significantly, which is a problem when they're only 1 year into the console's life and they've only sold 20 million units so far. Sure, Sony only gave a few days notice before they raised their prices recently, but they've already got over 90 million PS5s sold. They've already got more than enough people through the doors. Valve did their price hike in an instant without prior warning, but considering you don't need a Steam Deck to access and enjoy Steam, there's no concern about the Deck's price increase harming Steam's status as Valve's infinite money printer. Nintendo wants people to jump on now before this price increase because after that, it's going to be even harder to get people back on the fence with the Switch 2, let alone purchase one. So they want to hold out, but it's painfully clear that what they have coming out soon isn't likely to sell systems in droves. No offense to Splatoon Raiders and Star Fox, but I just don't think they have that kind of pull. So it would seemingly make sense for them to have this June Direct and make it a real bona fide banger with some real juicy announcements that can convince people to buy the console in preparation for these bigger releases before September. I'm not saying they need to empty the clip and show off a brand new 3D Mario, 3D Zelda, Smash Bros, and Animal Crossing all in the same Direct, but they probably should have like 2 of these ready to show off. And I'm not saying they should just do the Wii U thing and just say these things are in development without having anything to show off, mainly because they have no excuse at this stage. That September Direct was such a disappointment in retrospect because they didn't have a single major announcement to get people losing their minds and running down to the shops. Seriously, what was the biggest announcement from that Direct? The Mario Galaxy movie? We're not watching directs for movies, guys. I'm not sure if you forgot, but Nintendo is a video game company. And beyond that, that's what Illumination was working on. What was Nintendo working on? Was it the Mario Galaxy ports? The pretty bare-bones re-releases of Wii games that cost $70? Not to mention it's the most recent, obvious, and desperate attempt at Nintendo kicking the can down the road with 3D Mario. Was it the announcement of DLC for DK Bonanza and Day 1 DLC for Legend ZA? God, I hope not. And beyond that, it was probably Pokopia. And let's not kid ourselves, people would only try and convince you this was a major announcement now that Pokopia turned out to be a big success. If it performed like any other Pokemon spinoff, no one would even try to spin that narrative. And after such a long wait, one of the longest gaps we've ever had between General Directs, this one kinda needs to be a home run to justify all this. I know some of the Nintendo Defense Squad like to wag their fingers because people can't manage their expectations properly, and yeah, they are probably right to a point. But look, in this situation, fans can't not expect Nintendo to actually deliver on the high-tier goods and do some legitimate crowd-pleasing this time around, and you can't get mad at them for wanting that. A couple weeks ago, I checked out Twitter because I have no self-control, and I stumbled onto this tweet. This guy called Ultima claimed that Nintendo's president, Furukawa, had told Famitsu in an interview that directs were getting retired. Now, this turned out to be fake. Apparently, this individual has had a history of making satirical posts, but I think it is rather telling that this fake news actually got a lot of traction, and the average person believed it until it was disproven. Nintendo does feel like they're almost scared to release General Directs now after the last 2 didn't do so well. Hence why they've relied entirely on specialized mini-directs and dumping trailers on YouTube since September. Seeing how they've navigated delivering news since then, if they don't have a General Direct in June like they usually do, I think that's the telltale sign that Nintendo has silently given up on them. And I think that's a real shame because that does feel like Nintendo basically admitting defeat. Like, oh, we can't have a General Direct anymore without annoying our customers and causing our shareholders to bail out on us. I guess we gotta stop doing them. It sounds harsh, but the fact is, the easiest way to get better reactions out of your directs is to simply have better directs. Announce those bigger, hotly anticipated games. Don't make every single thing ludicrously expensive. And maybe don't force yourself to only do hour-long directs. Don't get me wrong, that June Direct probably should be an hour long, but after that, I'd vastly prefer getting those shorter 30 to 40 minute directs out more consistently again. Because as it is, these hour-long directs often drag at multiple points, and they haven't been worth the longer wait so far. Especially when your most recent direct isn't received very well, those bad vibes will linger over a lot of the fan base for a long time till that next direct comes along to hopefully course correct. And by then, the expectations are crazy high again and the cycle is likely doomed to repeat. As of writing this, the 2 most common rumors I've seen floating around of potential June Direct are June 9th and then mid to late June. The first rumor was that this would come out on the 4th, which clearly turned out to be a load of bunk. And while it would be cool to see Nintendo going head-to-head with all these other companies and their shows in the same week, I'm leaning on the latter claim in terms of what's more realistic. I hope it happens one way or another though. I love Nintendo, but they definitely walked in nice and cocky after the success of the original Switch, and just assumed they could copy-paste that success with higher prices, more obvious cash grabs, and overall less impressive games. So far they mostly have, but that came at the cost of burning up a lot of the goodwill that had been built up over the last generation, and that's going to become very clear once that price increases and the sales start to plateau. We've pretty safely reached the point of the Switch 2 where it actually needs to bring its own razzle-dazzle to both keep the core Nintendo fans and bring in that larger blue ocean. It's now or never, Nintendo. Earn back that goodwill. Hit us with your best shot. I want to see them knock this direct out of the park, and I already know I'll be recording my reaction to it if it comes out because I know I'll have a lot to say regardless. I might even make a bingo card, just for the heck of it. That's all I've got to say. Hopefully the next time I'm talking about Nintendo, it's with a big old General Direct right in front of me, but that remains to be seen. Thank you all so much for watching. This has been Baileyography, and I wish you all my very best. I love Nintendo, but they definitely walked in nice and cocky after the sex. After the sex. I mean, they were, I would be too.